My name is Richard Casper. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and I teach the course here at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. This program started basically because after my injuries in war, I didn't know how to deal with myself. I came back, had a brain injury, my best friend was shot and killed. I didn't know myself at that point. Art has helped me by giving me a chance to have a voice again. I used to not be able to leave my house. I couldn't go talk to people. I would physically throw up and get sick. If you could be 0%, that's committing suicide, 100% being the best you can be. After the Marine Corps, after being injured, I was at probably like a 9 or a 10. And after this school, I was back to like 85% me. For people who may struggle like I did and didn't want to break out of the house and be like, I'm not sure if this is going to work, I just want them to know my story and be able to come out here and learn with other combat vets how to do art. And if they're looking for one more way, if they just come out here and give me a chance, it's going to be worth it.
What we were aiming for is to express what we were dealing with, when we were deployed and during our military career, where we literally get out of our element, go on this kind of like alternate reality to go back in time, think about what we went through, and express it to other people.
Just being exposed to different concepts of art, like at the museum and some of the contemporary art we saw, that's what influenced me to try doing a performance piece for my last project.
The opportunity to be at the school was just phenomenal. It was amazing. At lunch, we could go and wander the halls of the museums, and that was pretty awesome.
I think the hardest part was actually talking about what I've been through. It was easy talking to Richard because he is a combat veteran and he has been through stuff I've been through. And
my job was to, go find IEDs or find landmines or anti-personnel landmines and take them apart. And little did I know, I was putting that stuff inside me.
At first, it's a little hard to let yourself become vulnerable. You won't really know what to do right away. It takes a couple days. I know for me, it took a week.
Being surrounded by a bunch of veterans that know what combat feels like, knows the after effects of combat, knows how it feels to come home. It was really comfortable being here.
They're gonna come to class like normal college students, treated like normal people that know how to be like, I can be in college, I am a normal person, and I could live like everybody else lives. If even one of them chose to go to college and study art and has that artist brain to where it saved them, it's totally worth it.
All right. Happy Thursday, people. Let's see who's on. I think everyone's up. My chat set up. Porsche's auto hosting me. That's what's up. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So if this is we've got quite a few people on Facebook. If this is your first time with CreatiVets, my name is Garrett Leo. I am the art director for CreatiVets. If you've been watching, looks good here, thank you. If you've been watching recently, we've had quite a bit going on over the past couple weeks of streams. I took a little hiatus for a couple of days, getting some work done, and I've been working on a graphic novel. So I thought it'd be a really cool stream to kind of break down the steps for working on a graphic novel. So I'm going to show you what like a final version might look like, what an in-progress version might look like, and then like how to start with one. So I've got all my components up here. Yeah, let's get started. So make sure everyone's set. Sweet. And I gotta make sure I stay on time today. No rambling, because at 3 o'clock, shout out Mrs. Zoe at 5 is gonna be doing a wood burning stream. That's gonna be super cool. Check that out. We posted a little example of some of the work they can make on our Instagram, so check that out. All right, we're up. Okay, so I guess I'll just kind of talk about this before I do any actual art making today. So if you are curious about how to make your own graphic novel, I can walk you through the materials that you would need, and at least my process and how to do it. So can you see? I'll take this down. So I've got all my parts here. As you can see, my desk is a mess. I've got all my supplies out, right? So I've got all the supplies out because I've just been like working, leave it alone, working, leave it alone. So I wrote this story. When I say I wrote this story, I came up with an idea for a story a couple of years ago. It's called, I landed on the title, The Ballad of Freddie Starr. So, funny story, I went to this, I think it was like a birthday party, or it was like a stand-up comedy night at some hotel in Chicago. That's where I'm from. And we watched this like cover singer. I'm not gonna drop his name because he's a real person in Chicago. But I watched him perform, and he like covered Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, and he was hilarious. I mean, he was really funny, and he was drinking a lot, and he was singing, and he sounded great. And I got inspired by his whole persona to write this story, and kind of, being the great artist I am, ripping off on other people's ideas. That like same story that everyone has heard about the singer that was wrapped up in the mob, right? And something happens that he is indebted to the mob or whatever the circumstances are. Everyone knows a version of that story. So I decided to make my own. So the first thing I did, and this is my comic labeled comics sketchbook. I have a million sketchbooks. The first thing I did was, let's see if I can find the actual first page. I made like a timeline. So I'll show my notes here. Yeah, I'll show my notes as I'm talking. I came up with the name Freddie Starr, inspired by the real person that I had met and got to watch him sing. I picked dates of when he was born so I can kind of time frame when this story would happen. I modeled his like life events after Frank Sinatra, even though his like mannerisms are more Dean Martin like. I'm a huge fan of Dean Martin. So I like wrote down some just brief settings: New York, Havana, New Jersey, Miami, like these highlight spots for mafia movies, right? Huge fan of those as well. I had actually just, when I was initially writing this, I had just gotten back. I went on a trip to Cuba. So I got to go see all the cool mob hangouts and hotels, and I went to the Tropicana and like watched the show and had a drink. So I was very in the mood to write a story about the mob in like the 50s, 60s, and before. So then I decided to do like a script writing style, right? Inspired by like old school black and white movies. Actually, as I've been working on this lately, and I'll kind of talk about where I left off and why I'm starting back up. I've been watching just like black and white mobster films because the audio or the dialogue is super short and to the point to tell the story a lot faster. And then the scenes are a lot faster, right? So it's a shorter movie. And then I just started writing down characters, right? So now I have notes in here for like the music that I wanted, right? Sinatra, Dean Martin. But then I wrote these just like characters that I wanted to have an important role. So this is where the initial notes. Now I'm not going to read through all these because I'm very detailed. But the first thing I did in wanting to write this story, I just kind of like made bullet points of events. So I have like an intro scene, right? Then I have like a part one. So I broke my comic into different scenes, and I'll show you that in the comic in a second. So I have like an opening intro. I had this like part one, the opening, to give some backstory, almost like an origin story. And then I made some notes on just like some life highlights, right? Things that happen in Freddie's life that would inspire the story or kind of lead the direction of the story. And then I did some initial sketches of characters. Now there's a character, the dive bar owner, or like the club owner that is in charge of Freddie. Timmy's comeback associate, thank you. And then there was the talent scout that would be the manager throughout the story for Freddie. So these are some initial designs. Didn't stick with them. So this is something I actually noticed going back. Like I said, I wrote this a couple years ago. I illustrated about half or like a quarter of the whole story and then stopped. My drawing styles have drastically changed. So before I used to be extremely cartoony. And then now, I'll actually grab an example. Yesterday was Willie Nelson's birthday, so I drew a picture of Willie. But as you can see, my drawing styles have drastically changed. I mean, they're very similar. They're very exaggerated. Some of the features are still the same, but where I'm at now, it's a lot more detailed, right? Before I was very cartoony, very clean lines. Now I'm getting into more detailed work. So that was a drawing. You can check that out on my Instagram. I edited it online and posted it. So then, once I had my characters, right, I just started sketching them out in my book. So this was revision 1, right? I had this idea of this like curly hair, some glasses, this creepy smile. Here's version number 2. This was our main character, Freddie Malloy. So part of the story is you get to know who Freddie was before he becomes involved with the mob, and he has a different last name. Let's see. I have some quotes, got some names written down for just like references. That's one thing that I'm still working on, and is I'm not good with committing to names for these characters. Besides Freddie, and I wanted to be very cheesy that his name was Freddie Starr because he's a star. So yeah, I come up with like a setting, your characters, right? And then I wrote a bullet points of like all the things that would happen in his life. So if we look here, this is where you can see how my brain works. I made another list of events of things that happen and how they affect things. So I would like get these like quotes in my head that I want these characters to say. So I'd write down the scenes. And then if I knew that there was one thing being said or one thing being done, I'd make a note attached to that scene. And then eventually I started breaking down the scenes. I've got them numbered into pages. So I think I'm at page 38 now. Let me just check. For the whole story, yeah, I'm at page 38. So this was my initial sketch of just like what's happening on one page for the first 16, right? Now the other thing was, I love when movies do like have Easter eggs, right? Little hidden messages or little connections between other stories. At the time, I was working on this comic, Whimsical Delusions, right? So this is a short story book of 5 short stories. I had my graphic novel connect to these stories because I love when movies or shows or books have like little Easter eggs across the stories, right? Okay, so here's some more character designs. This is the singer that would inspire Freddie to be a professional singer. This was the initial sketch for the hitman, right? The one that would be doing all the dirty work for the mob. Brief sketch of the mobster boss. Now, again, my style has changed, and you'll see that when I take out the big book, but the characters, for the most part, have the same characteristics, the same features. This is a sketch of Freddie. This is the main character, Freddie Starr. He pretty much stays the same. I keep his really cartoony, creepy self. The only thing that I've changed is just the amount of details, right? Now, if you're watching movies or you're watching TV shows, I used to watch a bunch of cool stuff and see these beautiful scenes that were picked out, like in cinematography, right? That like making the art of the movie. I would sketch out places that I'd go to, or ideas. So like this is the Silver Spoon Diner, a little Easter egg or hidden message to Johnny Cash's song Silver Spoon Cafe. This is where one of the meetings occur. So it's just a little like, if you know the song Silver Spoon Cafe, you would recognize this and know the story of Johnny Cash. This is an empty lot that I've just briefly sketched out. The Pickwick Theater is the model. This is in Park Ridge, suburb of Chicago. This was like where Freddie Starr would perform. And then I would make notes. And again, this was just adjusting my timeline of like factual history things that were going on. So when My Way was released, when That's Life was released, when Batista, the dictator of Cuba, was in power, when the revolution occurred. So just like I wanted my universe to be like an alternate universe of American history. So some of it has real life characters in the story, or events that influence the overarching or the overall story. But I kind of changed the timelines a little bit. Now this is, again, I've got a timeline here, right? Just breaking down what's happening when, so it all makes sense. And then I would make these are different parts of the story. So I've got these weird symbols here. So it breaks up different segments of It breaks up the different segments of the story. So what's part 1, part 2, part 3? What's this scene happening? And then I would write down, again, just like quotes that I for sure wanted in there or things that I wanted to see in the scene. These post-it notes are just like movable notes that I could attach to different scenes. So I sometimes do that for dialogue if I wanted to shift that around. Again, super detailed, just write, get as much information out there as possible. And then this was like a schedule of like getting it done. So I think that was, so that's like planning. So again, what you're focused on for starting a graphic novel, at least for me, was deciding characters that I wanted in there, a timeline of events, and then writing down quotes or dialogue that, I for sure wanted in the story. And then just some brief character designs, right? Now, I eventually, and this was when I first started it, I worked on a panel of all the main characters. I say main characters, but the characters that I would need. I have a lot of background characters in the story throughout it, just like people, but these are the big ones. So this is the hitman, and now this is pretty much the final design of him. The mob boss, again, roughly the same design. This is the manager that would manage Freddy and like kind of be the connection to the mafia. He's changed quite a bit. He looks a little bit more caricature-y in the story. Freddy, like I said, has stayed pretty much the same. The mob boss, or not the mob boss, the guy that had the contract with Freddy, right? His official manager before the mob gets involved. That's his design. Again, roughly stays the same. I've changed some facial hair and some just like facial structure things. I haven't gotten to the part where I need the federal agent. There is a federal agent involved. And then again, this is like the old school singer that Freddy looks up to and gets influenced by the mob to like be a professional singer for the mob. Now, the next thing you should do, so like once you have, again, characters, setting, sketches of the characters so you know what they look like, you can start thinking about how your comic page comes together. Right, so let's do some quick review. This is part of the opening scene. This is an inked version. Now, I started this a couple of years ago, and I did not finish it. So, like I said, my drawing styles have changed. They're very cartoony and clean back then. So some of it I'm keeping, some of it I'm going back and revising. So these are all in progress at the moment for me. But so, just quick review, things that you need to consider when you're making a graphic novel. The boxes that you see that hold the image, that's a frame, right? Or a box. I call it a box, but it's a frame, right? These little areas in between, right? The little white in between the boxes, my frames, those are the gutters, right? So I have them super thin so that there's a lot of details in the picture. We've got our characters, right? These are not main characters. You find out it's just someone to set up the story, set up the world that you're like reading into. So you've got your characters, it's the driver, and then this couple in the back, right? You can see that. And then I've got all these little bubbles laying around. These are the dialogue bubbles, right? The voice boxes. So what I sometimes do is I've got the bubbles going into other frames. It kind of guides your viewing. So reading American style, from left to right, right? The road's going this way, the car's driving this way, right? So you know you have to read it this way. You see the car, you see the picture. These dialogue bubbles kind of guide you, right? Guide you this way, and then he's talking so that you know they go this way, and then you go down, right? And it kind of just directs your eye as you're reading the comics. So that's something to think about. Is I've got them all different sizes, all the boxes, all the panels, different sizes, but you can have them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares and call it a day. That's your preference, and I do some pretty crazy stuff. Like I said, I'll just kind of do like a show and tell version of it. If anyone has any questions, by the way, for anything I'm talking about, again, this is going to be pretty much like almost like a mini art talk lecture, just to get this information out there so people can watch it back and start their own comics. If you have any questions, drop in the comments. I can see them all. So thanks again for people that are hosting me right now. But if you've got any questions about a scene that I'm showing, or a character, or a technique, or whatever, drop it. And if you haven't seen me ink yet, I think I've done like 3 streams. I think I might have did it last week or the week before that for ink drawing. So you can see the techniques. The techniques are the same, right? It's just how I apply them is a little bit different from when I did it a couple years ago to like my work now. So considering your characters, your frames, right, and then your gutters, and then your dialogue boxes if you have any dialogue. So this is like a finished drawing. Now, as far as paper that I'm using, this is that Bristol paper. I've actually got this a little example of Bristol. So this is what it would look like, but it would be much bigger. Bristol paper is for ink drawing. This is a artist trading card size. I do this so I can make, hold on, these little tiny drawings, right? And you can make them into playing cards. I actually have some playing cards. I'll show those off maybe later. So I'm using Bristol paper. This is the vellum surface, and then there's a smooth surface. So talking real quick about materials when you start working on your comics, right? Obviously get a sketchbook so you can get your ideas down and your general things. But when you are working on the big one, you would get a pad of paper like this, right? This is a 9x12. It's slightly smaller than this larger one I have. This is great if you have a small amount of frames, right? On this page, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? I use the bigger one so that I can get more detail in there. Obviously, you're going to be able to sketch and ink this size page faster, and this would take a little longer, but the larger one, will give you a lot more space to add details. And that size, if you're curious, is 11 by 14. Again, 11 by 14 is what I do most of my drawing on. I just think it's the perfect size to have the right amount of ability to add details. So, so that's like a finished version. What it looks like, what I recommend is you lay it out. So I use the sketchbook as a comic book, right? If this was my book, how would I flip through the pages? So I've got this intro page. I have these dates. I think I'm gonna take that part out as I revise it. But initially I had like a whole page. It would be black with the date, right? I might do just like the location instead. But this is the layout of my comic book, right? So this page was going to be page number 1. So let's take a look at that. We've got the couple in the car. We've got, I think, the female character looking out, the driver. Actually, hold on. That is this page. So I broke it up into 2. I'm just, again, going back. This is the initial sketch, much shorter, just like I had some imagery, right, perspective I wanted to look at. But I broke it up into the first 2 pages. Right, so let's look at things that stayed in there. This frame stayed with the 2 characters in the back. There they are, right? It initially was up here, but I moved it down to a smaller frame because I wanted to show some more driving. This picture, when he says the driver tells you the price, I kept that exactly how I wanted it right there, and then I added an extra scene where you saw the perspective of the guy trying to pay him, trying to break a 10. And then I wrote close up on a $5 bill in this frame, and I kept that close up $5, but I changed it to a 10 right there. And again, having that little overlap so it guides your eye this way, and then the hand is again bringing your eye this way to look at her, and then you go to the next scene. So just again thinking about how your eyes move around the picture. Move this back here. Keep my papers organized. So use your sketchbook as the actual comic. So as you flip through, test out and see what compositions you want. I personally do not like when it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 even boxes. I like them being a little distorted. So I can talk a little bit about balance. So when you're looking at an entire page composition, right? When your book is open, you've got these 2 pages. If I have 2 big images up here and then some small images there, to counter that, to make the other side look balanced so it's not like, it doesn't look uneven or wrong, I've got small boxes here, so I'll put some small boxes up here, and then I have 2 big boxes at the bottom, 2 big frames, right? That's so that it complements each other. So again, flipping through, what I did was, and I'm not going to show you all this, I went and sketched out all the pages before I worked on them. Again, using the sticky notes for dialogue, because that's something that I actually just settled on the first part, the dialogue for it. I'm pretty solid and set on it. I wrote it on a little Word doc, making a little like screenplay file. But again, these initial sketches are not super detailed. It's just about getting the character's position, what perspective you want, what little details you want. And then I would put these little post-it notes for the dialogue that I wanted, right? Things that I wanted them to say, or I think these are actually, yeah, this is actually like box by box, what is the dialogue? And again, not keeping it super plain. I'm drawing these arrows. This is to shift the boxes when I draw it on the big paper. And again, just keeping these things that I want to see, right? So I know this is a close-up, and those are the things that are important. The hair and then the facial expression. Like just those three little things, the hair, the nose, and the mouth, I know that he's going to be upset in that frame. Now this is where, when I first did it, I said I drew and illustrated about, I wrote the whole story. That's what's in here. I wrote the whole story and what's going to happen. What it looks like is a little different. I maybe did an eighth of the story in total, and that's drawing, colored, everything. And then I stopped right at the half mark of where I originally saw this story as being like a part 1, part 2. So I wanted the initial part of the story, part 1, to end on like a cliffhanger of like it's starting the rest of the story, right? So I did it up until that cliffhanger scene, and then I didn't finish it, and I just like put it on a shelf and didn't work on it. This wonderful time of the quarantine and staying socially distanced from each other has given me the luxury of time to work on this. So I kind of jumped back in. In my sketchbook, this is where I jump back in. So I already had it framed of what I was going to draw. These little blue lines is my marking now. So I've kept my old markings separate from my new ones. The blue lines, I'm separating what frames I want on a page. So again, over time, I did this a couple years ago starting it. My brain has changed as far as how I look at work, how I draw. So I'm adjusting that. That's why I'm going back in the old drawings and deciding what I want to keep, what I want to revise, and then what I want to completely do over. But the story stays the same, just how it looks has been changing. So that's a little artist talk. I think I talked for half an hour. A little artist talk about how to get it started. Again, if you have any questions, if you come in late and you're like, well, how did you do that? Just drop them in there. But that's how you start. Get a sketchbook, right? Focus on the characters, the setting, and then make a timeline of events. That's what I do. I think that works best for me. You might find a different method. I'm trying to find the timeline page, right? So I'll take these off. So this is like a little timeline I made right there of all the events, the dates and times. Like I said, this is like an alternate universe of America. It is not real life, right? Because I alter history, right? Quote unquote history a little bit. And then once you have your characters, do a sketch of them before you work on the big one, right? So I'll put this, I'll hang this back up. The reason I have, can you see it right there? The reason I have this, where I have all the main characters sketched out, is so that as I'm drawing in the pages, if I need a refresher on what they look like or what features or what clothes they're wearing, I can just look back up here, right? I can see it and I can draw it. So that's just copying it. So once you get the model character done and sketched out and you've decided on it, you can add it here, okay? So working wise, let's talk about materials and then let's start showing off the art, okay? I do not, when I'm working in my sketchbook, I can just use a regular pencil. This is just this is a 4B pencil, right? You can get a bunch of different graphite strengths or hardnesses. So I just use regular pencil to sketch. When I'm working on the comics, I'll grab a page that's sketched. I use the non-photo blue pencils. So if you've watched any of the past streams I've done with inking, you know I have a very special pencil. It's called a non-photo blue pencil, right? It's not just a regular blue colored pencil. I got a pack of these 2 of them on Amazon, I think for like $4. They come with a little eraser on the end. Eraser's pretty good. I ink it in blue. Or no, I sketch it in blue, and then when I ink it, I use micron pens. You can get a set of these, M-I-C-R-O-N, micron pens. You get a pack of 6 of these different line weights, right, different thicknesses. I think for like $10, you can get 5 of them. Super great permanent ink. The reason I use the non-photo blue pencil is once I ink all of it, right, once I take a page that's sketched out in blue like this, I'll ink it like this, right? And you can see the blue and stuff still on there. When you scan this, it's how you scan it. You scan it in grayscale, and all the blue will go away, right? So you don't have to worry about erasing. You can just take your art that you've inked over the blue and just go straight to it, scan it, and you're done, right? So non-photo blue pencils, micron pens. When I first did this, I used ink and a quill tip pen. These are great tools, very successful in using these. You tend to spill, I tend to spill a little bit more ink than I actually want to. So that's why I switched to the micron pens. If you know you're messy and you're a little clumsy with your hands like I am, do the micron pens. Those work fantastic. I do use this ink. Ooh, I just spilled some. You see that? Can you see it? That's what I'm talking about. I'm a mess. I do use this ink when I'm covering, it's like open. When I'm covering a large spot with black, right? So if you saw in here, those solid black areas, that's a lot of ink. So you can't use a pen. So take a brush, dip it in that. This is just India ink, Blick brand India ink. Maybe I broke the glass. I'm not really sure. Let me get this. India ink, that's just the type of ink you're going to use, but I use the Blick brand. It's called like Black Cat. So those big areas, just get a little brush, or you can get one of these fancy brush pens. Right? I've showed this off in past streams. It's got a little ink cartridge inside, and it keeps a super crisp, clean point. So this is a solid investment. This is like $15. For one, it comes with two recharge packs. Highly recommend getting that if you're going to be doing a lot of comic book working. I use that pen for all the hair details to make it look slick back. This is what I'll do. I'm going to take... Yeah. So I'm going to take this part of the book out. I'll show it to you via the printed version. So I finished... I'm just drying it so I don't spill it anywhere. I finished... Right, so this is what the comic would look like. I finished about half of what I wanted to finish for part 1. I wanted to have a quote, Frank Sinatra. I wanted to have a date. Right, so here's the finished scan. Right, so it opens up with 2 characters going to see Freddie's star. This is present day. It's hinted that it's present day. They're talking about how hyped he is, how it's amazing. It's his last tour. And you see them going in to the theater, and then it pans to Freddie. Freddie doesn't look so good. Right, he's a little worn out. And this is where I'm going to be making a lot of revisions. Right, this is the dialogue of where he's singing. Okay, now he's singing the song "My Way" by Frank Sinatra. That was kind of the song that inspired the tone of the story. Right. Check out that. Oh, there it is. Check out that cool triptych of Freddie Starr singing. Right. So then after that, the dates change and you go back in time. So this is when Freddie is working as a busboy at this venue hall. Right. So there's a wedding going on. It's hinted that it's a mob wedding. The main boss will come back later. Right, this guy, he's going to come back in and be someone that talks to Freddie. So we've got all these extra characters, this setting, but the focus is on Freddie, his dialogue. These little square boxes. Now here's a little thing I didn't get to talk about. We have our dialogue bubbles. Now this is where someone's talking, but then you can put these little like narrative boxes in, is what I call it, I guess. My little narration. This is Freddy's internal thoughts, right? So throughout the story, I sometimes put in these little thoughts, this little narration to give an extra layer of context to what's happening in the scene, or how Freddy responds to something, and then what he actually is thinking inside. This is Freddy's internal thoughts. So he's narrating over the scene that we're observing of this. This is the fancy singer guy as he's greeting people. There's loads of cash moving around. He's paying people off, right? So it's all about that corruption with the mob. So then the main character, Freddy, is approached by the singer, and then he gives his thoughts of being looking up to this guy, wanting to be like him, stuff like that. So it's just a very quick origin, just getting in the headspace of Freddy. Now let's look at this cool panel. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but this one panel is just a continuation of the top one. But I wanted to break it up to make it look like he had, that was the top, and then he walked off. Like he was in that panel and he walked into the next one, right? So again, being inspired by the old school black and white movies with the mob and any old black and white film, they tend to have really short, crisp dialogue, meaning it's just straight to the point. What's supposed to be happening right now? There's no fluff around what they're saying. So these scenes are super short, just to set up Freddy. Right? It's all about understanding the character that we're being introduced to and why he is where he's at. The overall story is just about all these things that influenced Freddy, and then I say Freddy's the main character, but it's really all these external forces that have pressured Freddy into being something that he thought he wanted to be, but then it turns out he was basically eaten alive by it. He just can't deal with the way he got there. So now that scene I haven't gotten to. So for now, where I'm at with this book, let's look at this page. So this is the start of the story. Okay, so part 1, let's just break it down. This is present day, where we open up with, so it's where we're at. Then it flashes back real far to a very brief origin story of Freddy before he was famous, before he was involved with anyone. This is who he was before, right? A lot of the times in these stories, we only know the character post the event, right, that changed him into that character. As this singer stuck with the mob, right? But this was I just wanted to introduce that Freddy was a normal person, right? He did have aspirations. Thank you, Ferret, for following right on. He was a normal guy, and then he got involved with people, so I wanted to show that normal person. Usually they don't. So just the attraction of the money, the fame, the popularity, the people talking, that was something that Freddy was involved with. So now this is... now we're in the past of the story that I will be telling, right? So the past, the origin story part was just to give us context of who Freddy was and why he's important to the story, why he's the main character. And now this part is going to be where we tell the story leading up to present day, if that makes sense, if you're following along. So now this is where I had difficulty drawing perspective when I started this, right? So I'm just going to show it. And then if you're watching, you'll be able to catch the differences. I'll talk about them. Right? Don't worry about the dialogue. Dialogue has completely changed since I started it. Right. So first one is just introducing these two characters talking at a bar. The dialogue here is just extremely fast-paced. It made no sense when I wrote it. This character is clearly an overseer of this guy. He's the one given the job to get Freddy. And then the main guy leaves. Right. It says 4 things and then leaves. And then you get a good look of just what's going on in this dump of a bar, this club. And then this is where Freddy is approached by the guy, buys him a drink. It's hinted that Freddy has a drinking problem. They're going to use that against him throughout the story, just his addiction. And then he makes a deal saying that he'd get him out of his contract, that he's going to work for the mob. Not saying the mob. I can't decide if I want to keep calling the mob administration or the outfit or what was the other one? I just kept referring to it as downtown as like people downtown want you to do something, right? So this was the manager told Freddie like, hey, you're gonna work for us. And Freddie was like, oh, I have a contract. I can't do that. My boss isn't gonna let that happen. He's like, we'll talk to him. Like, don't worry about that. Right? That's the thing that isn't private. Like in The Godfather, they referenced the singer, how he had that the contract with the Hollywood guy, and then put the horse in his bed. Right? But that's their story. Right? The Hollywood guy, go watch the scene. Look up the scene with what was his name? Not Robert. The consigliere of the Don of Marlon Brando, who is, I forgot what his name was. I'm blanking on it. But look for the negotiation scene with the Hollywood guy. I don't know. I gotta look it up. I just watched it the other day. Anyways, there's a scene where they're talking and he says like, I'm not no band leader, right? And then he says, I heard that story, right? So in The Godfather, Al Pacino. No, it's not Al Pacino. This is OAF5. It's Robert Duvall. That's his name. Yeah, so look up the scene with Robert Duvall, the consigliere, and he talks, this is in Godfather 1, and he talks to the guy in Florida, in Miami, about their singer. They're trying to get the singer out of a contract so that they could use him at their casinos, so I kind of took that too, that little moment. But when he meets with him, the guy tells us a huge story about why he's not going to get the part in the movie, he's not going to work for them, because he's not a pushover. This is the big Miami Hollywood guy. And then the Hollywood guy, he makes this comment and he says, I'm not no band leader. And then Robert Duvall's character kind of looks back like he was like caught on something. He's like, yeah. And then the Hollywood guy says, yeah, I heard that story. Right? So he's referring to this other event where the mob got involved with this singer's career and then either killed the guy or heavily intimidated him to the point where they let him go out of his contract. That's what was a big inspiration for this story, is that they refer to it, right? But they didn't dive into it. They didn't think that the singer was a strong enough character to bring back, right? But he's throughout the movie. He has a couple events. That was someone that I was attracted to as like a character. Like, well, I want to know that story. It's like heavily alluded to. So I thought it would be really cool to see what that story looks like. So this was my version, not in the same universe as The Godfather, but inspired by that. What would the story look like where the mob steps in to like acquire a talent, right? So yeah, and then after that was it. I stopped. I didn't finish it. It was like, yeah, we're gonna talk to your boss, and then you're gonna work for us. Like, let me handle it. And then I didn't finish it. I left it blank. So boom, fast forward to today. Let's take a look at where we're at now. Okay, this is what you're all been waiting for. You're like, God, this guy talks. Right? Let's look at some art. So that'll work. Okay, so this is the opening scene. We'll just show it off. I've changed. This is where I'm starting to do revisions, right? So this was the original perspective. I'm changing it, so I want to define that character a little bit more, make him look a little bit more intimidating. Then originally it went straight to this page, right? He said 4 things and then he left. That's not fun. I think it just didn't make any sense. So I added in another page, right, that offers the opportunity for more dialogue. Let me turn this. Yeah. Offers more opportunity for dialogue. Turn that down maybe. And then this is where my drawing abilities now, I like to highlight the little things in a scene. Right, I'm always interested in the aesthetics of a mob movie or of a story. Like, what are the little things going on? So while this mob boss is talking to him, he's eating these peanuts at the bar. So I did this. I'm going to do this really gross, detailed drawing of a hand going and getting some peanuts. These gross-looking peanuts as he's having this conversation. Right, really defining that character's face now. So I decided to keep some of the panels would have the really cartoony facial features, and then some really detailed. So taking inspiration from, honestly, like the SpongeBob, those SpongeBob episodes where like they'd pan in on SpongeBob to like, and it'd be really gross and grotesque and detailed. Doing that in mine. Or like Beavis and Butthead did that too, where it'd be like cartoony and then they'd do a close up and it'd be like super gross and detailed and just like too much. So my drawings now, the like big ones that I've been doing of the portraits, that style can come in a more natural way to just add emphasis. So added another page for dialogue. This page I pretty much left the same, right? Now this one, it's gonna be hard to see. I've been cutting out the floors, right? So this is actually, let's see if I can show you. 2 pages, right? So I cut out the floor here, the floor here, the floor here, and the wall back here, so that I could add better details, right? Before I just did, let me grab the book. Before, I just had all these, like, amateur, dumb, in my opinion, lines, right? I just added lines on everything. Like, you can't tell what the floor is made of, right? You can't tell what the floor feels like. And that bothered me. At the time, I just didn't know how to do it. Now I know how. So now if I look at the wall, right, there's some cracks on it. So maybe it's like a plaster wall. There's those little tiny stippling. Stippling is the little tiny dots to add just like a rough texture. Maybe it's like old plaster, right? I kept some of the lines, but what I added now, the lines are the shadows, but I added texture and just drew out all of the floorboards, right? So here you can see better. You can see the nails. You can see the grain in the wood. Still not super detailed, right? Just suggesting that it's got some wood grain, putting the nails on there, putting it there, so that the space itself has materials, has texture. That's something that in the past, I just didn't know how to do it, how to draw it right with ink. Now that I've been drawing over the span of a couple years, I know how, right? Same thing with the curtain. The curtain was just white. I'll show that. Now I added just this little white, the little tiny dots on the white, so it's almost like a really fuzzy, like heavy fabric thing, right? This stayed the same. I actually really like this. Now, the one thing that, when I drew it at the time, the face has changed a lot just because I couldn't draw consistently the same face. So, like, this guy looks completely different from this one. But you get that it's the character, right? The outfit's the same. The facial features are exaggerated in the same way. What's going on, Mr. Panic? Ray Panic just joined in. What's going on? But I really liked the setting and the scene that I made. Now, I did some little details in the background behind the bar just because I wanted to kind of finalize that. But other than that, I've kept it the same. Okay. Boom. And now this is where the story picks up. So, this is an exclusive showcase of the comic. Exclusive. No one has seen this except for me. So now we do another jump in setting. So that was at the bar. This is still a straight continuation of the story, but it's like that night. So the dialogue between the boss is that you need to the manager, right? Oh Lord. That's the manager. The other guy was the boss. He told him, you got to sign him. Get him working for us. We got a lot of, there's a lot of things going on that the mafia is doing. It's during the time where the mafia was trying to make Cuba like a little mob state, right? Have a government that protected organized crime. So they're trying to get there's a lot of things moving on as far as like the business. So they need Freddie to be like the front of legitimate entertainment. So like, you got to sign him tonight. That was the option. Like, figure it out. I don't know what you got to do, but you got to do it. So here we have this character. This is the hitman from my sketch, right? Smoking a cigarette outside. I worked on perspective a little better. Now we flash from the outside to the inside, and he's the manager from the bar is meeting with this big brute of a man, and you find out that big brute of a man is the club owner, right? And the club owner has a contract. So here again, I'm panning from like, this is just details on the table. Right? You know they're having a dialogue, but like, what does the table look like? Right? Taking that moment to actually see an illustrated table of what's on there is interesting to me. An opportunity to have a really detailed gross face, right? Now this is him like leaning on the table, setting the tone of like, how was his buzz? Did he come in and sit back? Did he sit forward? Is he kind of like, all right, like let's get to it. What's going on, right? And then there's this page. Now this one offers me an opportunity to sketch out the background out the window. So it sets the scene here, but then out in the window, what's outside? So you get to see that they're far away from the city. They're in some suburb, most likely. right? Another page of dialogue, but again, super fast, right? He asks him, "Does it work for us?" And he says, "No." That's the story. He says, "Nope, not going to talk about it. Not up for option. There's reasons why, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to sell the whole story, right?" But they had that dialogue, right, just like that. And then he leaves, or he's about to leave. And now he was brought there by the driver. He didn't drive there himself. So this guy, Nitty, that's his name, Nitty, so far. He's the one that has to drive him back. So he says, "Go outside. He'll drive you home. He'll drive you back to the bar," I think is what he says. Let me just check, because I'm not going to give away all of it. So now here, again, is another opportunity to break up the panels. This is going to be the same picture as this, right? So it's the same scene here to here. But on this scene, his head's going to be turned, looking this way, and the club guy is going to be walking out, like storming out towards the car. And he's going to tell him to drive him home. Right? So now this is where I get a little aesthetic-y with where exactly they go. So, hold on one second. I'm getting a little nerdification. Okay. We're set. All right. Oh, put that there. Boom. Boom. Okay. So now this is where I get a little bit more creative with how I want this comic to be laid out. So I was concerned about how short the dialogue was, because when I started this, I read through it and I was like, wow, that's really short. And I couldn't remember why I was doing it. So like I said, as I'm working on this now, I'm watching old black and white films, like mob ones specifically, to listen to the dialogue, the verbiage they use, because I want this to reference those, right? So imagine this being a black and white film. You can, okay, great. That's the type of feeling I want. Now the car style for the time, this is like a style from like the 70s, but the time is back in like the 50s. So this is again like an alternate universe of like almost like a utopia America or dystopia, right? Maybe it's more run by the mob and corrupt than originally, right? That's an idea that I run with in a lot of my work that I do, is just like corruption and like utopia, dystopia feelings. So here you see him. Now again, I'm going to pan from like, this is what you need to see, right? It's setting up where the characters are, right? That's the main story. But then I do these little moments of detail. So this is the detail of the car key in the ignition, detail of the car backing up with the lights on. So all this will be black, but the lights will be shining. And then again, this is like what you need to see, the car leaving the parking lot. And here's another little detail of him driving down like a dark road. Okay. Here's a little, again, I like putting little Easter eggs in. So this symbol, this 1933 thing, is a symbol that I'm using for a series of drawings, these portraits. Boom, those portraits up there. Called Simon's Club. So that's a new body of work that I'm working on. This is the key tag that Simon's Club members have. So this is just something that you see it, it'll be like, oh, that's interesting keychain. I wonder what that is. But if you know more about my work or about other stories that I've written, that is a little Easter egg that connects a bunch of other artistic ideas that I have. So that's something that, again, you wouldn't know offhand. It's an Easter egg, little hidden thing that now you know. No one else will, unless they watch this stream. So now this is where I do just a lot of cool, I'll flip that over, a lot of cool perspective things. Right, so you're getting the perspective of the road, right down here. You get the perspective of, if you're sitting in the back seat, what is it? What do you get to see? Right, if you're the audience, I like to think about what does the audience get to look at? Right, do they get to experience it like a movie where you're seeing the characters interact, or if you were in the car, right, in this setting, if you were in the car, where would you be? Would you be in the driver's seat, the passenger, in the rear? So if you're in the back seat, you could see Nitty driving, touching the radio, right? He's more focused on the radio, and then the big guy on the right, right? Now, this is where they have a little bit of an argument. He asks him, he basically says, where are you taking? Are we taking the scenic route? And this guy tells him to stop talking in a very impolite way. Now, this is where I'm gonna pause, because this is the story now. Now, after this page is when you find out what happens to someone that denies the mafia what their ask was. And the mafia has to deal with it. So I'm not gonna show it. that's going to be tough, but you're not going to see it. One, because I didn't ink it yet, and I think it'll look very cool when it's inked. Two, it's pretty graphic. Like I said, this is a mafia scene, mafia story. I'll flip to, no, I can't even show that because that's going to give it away. So I'm going to take out, it's 4 pages. I'm going to take them out. You're not going to see them. So all that, again, this is like a summarized version of the story so that you can get an idea of how things develop, how to put things together. But the story, the little what happens, you'll have to find that out by reading the comic book when I'm all done. And that's hopefully soon. So this is after the events take place, the shot heard around the world event for my world. We go to the next day where they go to pick up Freddy. So this is what a page will look like before I draw anything, right? So again, breaking it down to the basics, we've got our panels, right? Our little boxes for the image. And then we've got the gutters, right? The space between all the frames. Okay. Now this is how I do it. I think in my head, it's very fluid, so this will take me like a minute to draw. So I'm just thinking about what do I want to show to set up the setting, the scene. What do I want the characters? Do I want to show where they're at in their environment, or just want to show them? And then I think about the dialogue. What needs to be said in that scene? How is the story going to progress? So for here, this is going to be a scene that mimics this. Right, where I start with a huge, like just drawing of the setting, and then I go into the characters in the setting. So here is going to be Freddy's apartment building, right? This is going to be Freddy in the doorway. Hold on. Did I miss a page? Am I missing a page? Hold on. Hold up. There we go. Here we go. So this is actually the first page. So a big scene that mimics the older one of just the setting up the apartment of Freddy. And then Nitty, the same guy from the story that was the driver, right? The night before. He's walking up like a staircase, knock on the door, then the door with no hand knocking, and then this I want to be like a perspective of, again, thinking about how do you view the story. This would be if you were the person looking through the peephole at the character. So this is gonna be like a fishbowl effect of Nitty in the hallway, as if you were the one looking through the doorway. Right? And then this will be, the door opens, you see Freddy. This will be Nitty walking into the doors to set up what Freddy's apartment looks like. It'll be really gross, falling apart. And then some dialogue telling him to get ready, go outside. Then this will be Freddy again in the scene. So going from detailed shot of Freddy, the scene with both of the characters in it, dialogue with just the faces, then switching to a picture at the bottom, again setting up that scene. So Freddy leaving to get dressed, right, to go out. Then outside, again showing that apartment, but more of like an action shot. So it's not showing off the apartment. It's Freddy leaving. Nitty's already like going towards the car. This is a perspective from inside the car. You'll see the manager from this guy, the manager. He's already in the car, so imagine if he was in the back passenger seat and you, the audience, was in the back driver's seat. You're looking past him at Freddy walking outside. So that's that picture right there. And then this is if you were Freddy looking in the car, right? Perspective changes. So it's going to be the manager in the car talking to him, hey, I've got some good news, right? And this is going to be a full shot of Freddy, more detailed, right? That grotesque drawing. And then this is either going to be, I wrote on their front or side of the car. So this is another setting spot. So it's either the side of the car as a whole with all the characters in it, or the front with all the characters in it. Okay, so now this is going to be, I think the rest of these is driving scenes, like pictures of the car moving, characters inside. Again, switching that perspective of, when you hear the things being said, are you the characters? Like, is it being said to you? Are you the one saying it? Or are you just in the car as an observer? So those next two scenes show a lot of dialogue, and then they also show the neighborhood. So again, those like more detailed like glamour shots of the city, right? Before it was the scene of this like dark area for when they were driving the bar guy home, right? The bar owner home. Now it's going to be more driving scenes showing where Freddy lives. So that's something that I like to show off. And that's, I like to show off the art of the graphic novel. And I think that's something that graphic novels get to do. It's not just a comic where it's short and sweet and it tells a little thing. Graphic novels, you can really showcase your drawing skills or just showcase a picture or an image. So some of the scenes, these bigger panels, are going to be just pictures of the car driving through Freddy's neighborhood. So show off, add that extra layer of context as to who Freddy is, where he's coming from, where is he currently living, and then as they're talking about his life changes, you get to put all that in perspective of where Freddy is coming and where he's supposedly going, right? And then this last one, this is how I end the part 1 of the whole book, of the whole story. This is the end of part 1. Remember, it's a 2-part book. You'll have some more dialogue. Now, this would be really important because it's 3 pictures will depict how the mafia is going to keep Freddy heavily influenced to work for them. And then I wanted a giant work of art to kind of talk about the expansion of Freddy's life into something greater and bigger, right? So how I did that was, in this scene, I've got, what's his name? The manager pouring a drink for Freddy. Freddy, you will find out, is an addict. It kind of is hinted at in the initial dialogue and conversations in the bar, but he's pouring him a drink and he offers him a drink to work for them. And then you see Freddy drinking, right? So that's the kind of like, the mob's going to keep him addicted to this idea of fame. And then this, very simply, he's going to be addicted to alcohol. Gives it to Freddy. Freddy accepts it, drinks it, meaning he's down for whatever it takes to become the next star. And then here it'll be, I'm imagining like a little highway here that they're driving on, going into the city, and I'm thinking it's going to be New York City, right? So big New York City in the background, super detailed, a lot of like bright, shiny buildings to contrast the like shady, not so great, rundown neighborhood that he was in before. So they pick Freddy up from this not so great neighborhood, this apartment that's fallen down. He's living pretty grossly, and then they pick him up, they give him the drink. They're like, "You're working for us now, have a drink." And then they're going to take him to the bright New York City, right? So the book ends on a giant drawing of a very large open city that you can imagine. All these things that could possibly happen. Part 2 of the book, and this is where, I'm not there yet, but part 2 of the book will be telling that story of what happens after. So it'll be very direct. Like they reference that Freddy's going to meet his new employer. So they're gonna have that dialogue, that conversation of what Freddy is, who he's working for. Freddy will kind of get the idea. It's not going to come right out and be like, you're working for the mob now. It's going to be just hinted at that they're not as legitimate as they say they are. Freddy's going to see that over time, just the corruption, and he's going to turn a blind eye to it. That's a big, just like overall character development for him, is that he is a good person that just wants to be a star, right? And that whatever it takes, and he takes the route of going with the mafia, which they get it done, but at what cost of his morality. So yeah, part 2. This is part 1, pretty much all done. I got to sketch out those last couple pages, and then, like I said, ink it, and then it's done. Part 2. If I go on my little sketchbook, it's all done. I wrote it all out in here. Not the dialogue boxes, but I have this timeline of events. Right, so I know exactly how the whole story ends. I know where he goes from this conversation in the car. Just drawn out exactly what it looks like. I have not done that yet. So my goal as an artist is to get this done in the next couple weeks, get it inked and ready, and then I'm going to do some scannings, and then I can make a second draft of The Ballad of Freddie Starr. So that's comic books. That's graphic novels. A little intro. There was a lot of talking. I didn't make pretty much any art. I just talked about it. But I thought that would be pretty cool to kind of talk about where I'm at in my studio. And then I don't see any questions. People still watching. Right on. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hanging out for me. If you have any questions, now's the time before I log off for the day. I think that's it. something that I like to just say is when you're doing something like this, like a big project, for me, it's important to really feel like I want to do it. If I don't feel like I want to do it, like right now, I'm really not feeling like drawing and inking and stuff, so I don't want to push it. Thanks for auto-hosting me. Right on. So for art like this, right, like I said, don't push it. If you're not feeling it, then just don't do it. You know, take a break. Like I said, I've been working pretty hard on this the past couple days. I can show off. I've been doing these little drawings to break up. Take them out. I've been doing these little drawings to break up when I'm working on the graphic novel, because the graphic novel takes a lot of brain energy, right? You're like thinking about dialogue, you're telling this story, you got to picture it. So I've been doing these little drawings that I think I'm going to sell on my website. But these are original drawings of just like character designs using. I love the way that blue pencil, the non-photo blue pencil looks. Here's that Hitman character, Nitty. So what I've been doing is sketching and then inking it and then like shading areas with the blue. And then I take this really nice Tombow USA pen, do a little outline of the blue on it, you can see that. And then I ink the background with just that India ink so that it's just like a nice, really unique, original character design drawing, right? Boom! Look at that. Look at those sparks flying. So, just talking before I sign off, again, highly encourage working on something bigger. It doesn't have to be a graphic novel. It could be anything. If you want to do a giant painting, whatever. But always break it up with little things that you can do to kind of give your brain a break. Like I said, I've been working on this for a couple days. And I was going to work on it with you all, but I'm really not feeling it. And for it to work, right, for it to be the best that I want it to be, you got to be in the right mindset. So there's some little drawings I've been doing. Let me give a little shout out to what else is going on with CreatiVets this week. Like I said, stay on here at 3 o'clock. Mrs. OEF5 is going to be jumping on doing some wood burning. So I did a lot of talking, so thank you for hanging out with me while I talked at you through the process of graphic novels. But if you're interested in seeing some art being made and talked through, please stay on 3 o'clock. We'll check that out. Go to creativevets.org/live. You can see our schedule for the rest of the week. We've got a workout tomorrow morning. We've got some songwriting, and I'll be actually making some art tomorrow, not just talking for the entire time. I'm going to be taking care of this painting that I did. Right, we did this painting last week, the week before. It's dry now, so I can coat it. I've got some extra sculptures, some found object sculptures that I'd like to paint on and just do a little like art making session. Nothing very specific, right? Just kind of making. That's always important. Like I said, find that good balance of working on a project that you can keep your creative energies flowing, really make something you're proud of, but then at the same time, take a break. Don't push it. Don't rush it. Now's the time about, slowing down, taking your time to do things. So it's, again, do some little projects that you like. I love doing little character drawings. For myself, these, I'll show it again. Ooh, those big portraits I'm doing up there is like my body of work right now. I've been doing a lot of portraits. But how can I make something that someone would want in their home? So those are great for sketching and drawing and then putting them online. But I wanted to do something like this, right? Where I could give this to someone, they could frame it, they could hang it up, and it could be like an original artwork that mimics what I do digitally, right? I print a lot of my work, but I have been making a lot of handmade things for people, and I thought that would be a good little break. So, that is intro to graphic novels. I think I'm going to work on the sketch offline, not streaming it, because that's really hard for you to see with the blue pencil. Once I get the whole story sketched out, I'll do a stream for inking. If I get this done today, sometimes I do like 10 pages a day, sometimes I do 2. It's all about that mental health energy of, what do you want to do today? What feels right? I don't like pushing it when I'm not in the mood, I'm not in the mood, but sometimes I spend hours doing it. It all depends. So if I get this sketch done today, I'll do some inking on it tomorrow because I'll be ready for it. But I really want the story to be fleshed out all the way, start to end. Of like, I have the dialogue set, I have the sketches out. I don't want to start inking it unless it's set in stone. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was it. I think that's it. Any other questions? Mr. 2 said, kickin' rad. Look forward to reading it. Yeah, man. I mean, I only made, like, these little ones. I made 20 of them, and I gave them out to friends and stuff because I knew it wasn't done. But I'm super excited to read it. Like I said, read it like this. That was the first thing I did when I started again, because I hadn't worked on it for so long. Was I just took it out and just read through it, and I was like, wow, that dialogue was terrible, and it goes so fast. There's nothing in it. So I took the time to slow it down and break it up into something that I think I'm going to be really proud of when I'm done. Right? But yeah, so if you're looking to do some more streaming with us this week, go to creativets.org/live. See what's coming up tomorrow. We've got 3 streams planned. We will have a huge amount of streaming next week for the big Payback and Giving Tuesday for us. So we'll be doing like a 24 hours of streaming. So check that out. We'll post some more stuff on our social media. Check out the post that we just did for Mrs. OEF 5. She'll be staying on at 3. She'll start up a wood burning, like drawing on wood with some hot stuff at 3. So stay tuned for that. I know I'll be watching that because that'll be super exciting to see. Other than that, I think that's it. Thanks for streaming with me today. Please keep doing it. Share this, everything. Again, go on our Instagram, our Facebook, and see what we've got going on. Check out our link in bio on Instagram. See all the cool stuff that's going on. All right? Until next time.
We are a nonprofit that is helping combat disabled veterans heal through the arts and music. Our art programs in Chicago and California help combat disabled veterans tell their story through art. We enroll them into the best art institutes in the country. We pay for their tuition, their housing, their food all 3 weeks so that they can finally tell their story through art. We also bring combat disabled veterans to Nashville, to places and rooms like this here at the Grand Ole Opry, to tell their story for the first time with pro songwriters all about the things that they went through that they've never been able to talk about before. These programs have been extremely successful in helping veterans combat their PTSD. Right now, CreatiVets has more veterans applying for our programs than we do funding. So if you can go to creativets.org and donate, we would appreciate it.